How are you handling the things that God has given you to protect, to watch over? Parents, that includes your kids. How are you discipling your own kids, not other people's? How are you discipling your family? Husbands, how are you taking care of your wives? When's the last time you prayed for them? Not for them to change their hearts that they agree with you, but when's the last time you prayed for them? Wives, when's the last time you prayed for your husbands? We need to know that God has given you things to be good stewards of it because he could take it away. We have people and things, guys, for seasons. What is it that you're doing in the season he's given you, people and your things? Hey, we're continuing our series, Genesis. So if you have your Bibles, you're at Genesis 14. Genesis 14, guys, when I was reading this is a big chunk of what's happening. Really, you could divide this chapter into 3 sections. There's like this beginning section that I'm going to start from, and you're going to see a list of a lot of kings with a lot of names, and a lot of names that you've probably never named a dog or named anyone before, and you're going to say, what is this? So bear with me on the names. There's going to be a lot of them. And then the middle section is Abram rescuing Lot, who we saw in the last chapter of that he started separating himself from Abram. And then after that, you see this mysterious Melchizedek. Has anyone ever heard of him before? Right? A couple people have heard of Melchizedek before, right? But not everyone has, but a couple people have. Okay, then you have that. And you have to sit here and think, man, which one of those 3 do we really want to unpack today? Because you can spend an hour or 2 on each one of those 3 sections in this chapter. So what we decided is if you are plugged into our daily devos, this week in our daily devos, I'm going to unpack this chapter for you, the things I can't do this morning. Does that make sense? So this morning, there's going to be a lot we're going to go through, but to do it justice, we're making sure that the devos unpack all the things that you really want to dive deep in. So if you're plugged into those, awesome. If you're not, you can get with our media team and ask, hey, how can I be a part of that? And they'll get you connected. Because I know we have new people. Some people have been here. Some people don't know about that. Go check those out. It's a Devo sent right to your phone every morning at 7 a.m. And you can dive more into the scriptures, and especially in today's message. So if you're taking notes, this title, let me tell you, when I told this to Garrett, he was like, are you serious? I said, yes. So it's this: a lot to gain, a lot to lose. A lot to lose, a lot to gain. That's the title. And you can guess who we're talking about today. Yeah. That's the title of today's message, and it's specific in those ways. So yeah, that's the title of this. Hopefully you won't forget it. A lot to gain, a lot to lose, a lot to lose, a lot to gain. Man, when I saw the name Lot in here, I was like, man, you have to do something with that. You have to do some dad jokes with that. My dad's here, and my mom from South Carolina, so they got to be in here this morning. And in honor of my dad, I had to do some dad jokes. I was like, man, my dad would be proud of this one. A lot to gain. And I know he's going to use that back home. Yeah, you're welcome. But I feel bad for those who are going to use it on. But don't get it. You didn't say it. Don't say you got it from me. Okay. Here we go. Genesis chapter 14. Let's look at verse 1. It says this: in those days, King Amphrael of Shinar, King Arioch of Elasar, King Chedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goim waged war against King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Sinab of Admah, and King Sherember of Zeboim, as well as the king of Bela, that is Zor. All common names you guys see at Dutch Bros or any other places you guys go. Verse 3, all of these came as allies to the Siddim Valley, that is the Dead Sea. They were subject to Chedorlaomer for 12 years, but in the 13th year they rebelled. The 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashertoth Karnaim, the Zizim in Ham, the Emim in Shevev Kirathim, and the Horites and the mountains of Seir, as far as the El Paran by the wilderness. Then they came back to invade at Mizphat, that is Kadesh, and they defeated the whole territory of the Amalekites as well as the Amorites who lived in the Hazanon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and lined up for battle in the Siddim Valley against King Shedlamer of Elam, King Tidal of Goim, King Amraphel of Shinar, and King Arioch of Elisar. 4 kings against 5. So here you go. Here's one of the firsts. There's a lot of firsts in this chapter. One of the firsts is you're getting the names of these 9 kings, and they're all going to wage war against each other. 5 against 4, and so you're seeing there's a list of all these kings right here. They're about to have this big war, and what is interesting to note about this, in just a couple chapters, you're going to see what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're going to see some details in here of how the city kind of was able to blow up, not in the way surprise is right now in that way, but in a different type of blow up. But it says this in verse 10. Now the Siddim Valley contained many asphalt pits, which some of your translations may say tar pits. Now I want you to know, just in a couple chapters, you guys know what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah, what rains down? Now what do you think happens when this is going to hit a tar pit? And imagine what's going to happen to this city right here. It's pretty amazing, right? The little details that you find in here and what God did and what happens from this. And you still see that it's just the details of God and his plan and his sovereignty. I want you guys to know he has a plan and he's sovereign in your life too. Every little detail of your life matters. Everything. There's no such thing as a coincidence. We heard this last week from Pastor Mac, and no such thing as a coincidence. God doesn't work that way. It's not just an accident. Even the reason that you're here in the seat right now, he designed for you to be here. Even if you're watching online, he designed for you to tune in and click on this. Even if you're at a church right now, he's designed for you to be there and listen to what it is. The neighbor that you have is there for a reason. Their yappy Chihuahua dogs are there for a reason. There's a reason why you have the life that you're given, but you got to look to the Creator who's sovereign and has that plan and purpose. There's a reason why he woke you up this morning. And what is it do you think he wants to do with your life today? How do you want to praise his name today? But I want you to see, even with the little details of what's happening in this valley right now. And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell into them, but the rest fled to the mountains. The 4 kings took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food and went on. They also took Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, for he was living in Sodom and Gomorrah. I want you to make a quick note. I want you to notice where he's living now. When we last left, he was stationed near it with his tent facing it. So look at this quick progression of what Lot did. In chapter 13, you see that he looked out and he saw Sodom and Gomorrah. He looked out and saw it. Then he separated himself from Abram. And then he went and placed his tent to face Sodom and Gomorrah. So he's getting closer and closer, looking out at this city that is known for being evil and wicked, known for turning its back on God, known for doing evil. It's known for that. So it started with him seeing, him separating himself, and him planting himself to face it. And now where do you see him? He's living in it. And then again, in a couple chapters, he's going to be a big part of governing it. And so one of the questions I have before we continue for you to write down is, which way is your tent facing? And we'll get to that in just a second. What does I mean by that? Verse 13. One of the survivors came and told Abram the Hebrew, another first, the first time you see that word Hebrew in the Bible, who lived near the oaks belonging to Mamre the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol and the brother of Aner. They were bound by a treaty with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken prisoner, he assembled his 318 trained men born in his household, and they went in pursuit as far as Dan. Just a little note, too, that Dan, that's named after the tribe of Dan. But if you notice, that tribe isn't here yet. This is way before that happened. So what this is doing is letting the reader know kind of how far they went. So right now, if we were to write out a script of what's happening right now, and we would say, hey, people were gathering in Hope City Church, well, what if we wrote Calvary Chapel Surprise, or whatever it was? There's going to be people years from now that didn't know this was here. They'd write something that's here that makes sense to them. So what they're writing is for people that are like, oh, they went as far up north as Dan. Even though I wasn't there yet, but at the time they wrote this, Dan was a place. And they're like, okay, it's making sense for the reader to understand where this was. But it's fun, again, when you look at this to realize, wait, Dan wasn't there yet. How'd they know that? Well, because, one, God knows and is in control of everything. But at the time this was written, it's letting them know how far up north that they went. And then that 318 trained men, which shows you how rich Abram was not only did he have servants. Now, he had lots of servants, and this is just the trained men. It's not talking about the females and the kids and all that as well, but he had servants. Now, these 318 trained men were trained specifically for war. If you dive deep study into what all this trained men looks like, it was just they were trained for battle, which is so cool because Abram, who had big faith, we're going to see this big faith in a couple chapters as well. He is in the Hall of Fame, the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11, for his faith and his going to sacrifice his son. If some of you know that story, some of you probably don't know that yet, but we're going to get there. He's known for his faith, but even with his faith, he was still prepared for battle. Are you guys? Even with the faith that you have, that God's got you, that he's in control, are you still prepping your hands for war and your feet for battle in the spiritual battle that we're in every single day? In Ephesians 6, you see that we're supposed to put on the armor of God. And there's many times that we don't put it on first thing in the morning, and that's why sometimes we cave. And we go backwards because we weren't ready first thing in the morning. Even with faith, guys, you still have to be trained and ready to go because the battles that we face every day are spiritual. And what happens is we get mixed up and we point the finger at people and places and things and all this. Guys, it's a spiritual battle that we're in. The good and evil is God and the devil. And those aren't even comparison. The devil is an opposite of God. God is amazing, phenomenal, all-powerful, all-knowing, all places. The devil isn't even any of those. So it's not like an opposite thing. But there is good and there's evil, and it's spiritual. And so are you preparing yourself for the spiritual battles that you're going to face every single day? You can see Abraham, who had great faith, he was still ready to go. And it doesn't mean, man, his faith must have been so weak. Why didn't he just trust God that he had his back? We need to be ready too for the battles that we face every day, because even I can cave if I'm not putting my armor on every single day. 1 Peter 5:8, be alert, stay sober-minded. Your great enemy, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Guys and girls, that someone is you. That someone is me. It's looking around for the weak link who's not paying attention, not ready to go, and he's going to pounce. And that's why sometimes you wake up or you're walking around and all of a sudden a thought hits you or your eyes go somewhere like, where did that come from? And sometimes you wonder, how did I get here? It's because we haven't been trained and ready to go. We've been soft in our faith. We've been content in where we're at, and we're not diving into this because, I'm good. I've been good. I heard a pastor say, if you're not bumping shoulders with the devil on your daily walk, it's because you're walking the same direction. When you say yes to Jesus, you're public enemy number one of the devil. If you're feeling the spiritual warfare, keep going. You're heading the right direction. Great job. Welcome to being a Christian. I'm not here to tell you being a Christian is easy, and you got all your problems solved on earth when you say yes to Jesus. You have all your problems solved for eternity when you say yes to Jesus. He says to you here in John 16:33, he says, in this world, in this life, you will face trials and sorrows. That's a promise. But you know what's cool about Jesus? Is he doesn't end it with that and think, oh, thanks, Jesus. He ends it with, but take heart. I've overcome the world. That's what you hold on to when you guys face trials, when you face sorrows, because I have those too. I have them too. I face them. I struggle. Do you think this is easy to wake up and be like, I've got everything that I need. Man, my life's good. Cup of coffee. Woo! No, I wake up, Dad, I want this, I want that. And you sit down and you're finally, Dad, Demi's pulling my hair. Oh my gosh, she just put a booger on me. You guys, we face things and it's hard. And it's easy to say, I'll get to this later. And then guess what? A week goes by. And you're wondering, how did I get here? We got to be ready. And it's funny how that one little thing that I see in here, he had 318 men. He was ready for battle. He was ready for the things that God gave him to take care of and to possess and to watch over. How are you handling the things that God has given you to protect, to watch over? Parents, that includes your kids. How are you discipling your own kids, not other people's? How are you discipling your family? Husbands, how are you taking care of your wives? When's the last time you prayed for them? Not for them to change their hearts that they agree with you, but when's the last time you prayed for them? Wives, when's the last time you prayed for your husbands? We need to know that God has given you things to be good stewards of it because he could take it away. We have people and things, guys, for seasons. What is it that you're doing in the season he's given you people and your things? And what does Joshua say? As for me and my house, we will what? Abraham, you see, did that with his 318. Let's get back to it in verse 15. And he and his servants deployed against them by night, defeating them, and pursued them as far as Hobah to the north of Damascus. That's even farther up north. He went all out. He brought back all the goods, and also his relative Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the other people. Now here you go. This is, again, where it gets pretty interesting. Verse 17, after Abram returned from defeating Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the Sheva Valley, that is the king's valley. Here you go, verse 18. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, Abram is blessed by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has handed over your enemies to you. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people, but take the possessions for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand in an oath to the Lord God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or sandal strap or anything that belongs to you. So you can never say, I made Abram rich. I will take nothing except what the servants have eaten. But as for the share of the men who came with me, they can take their share. What's interesting is, here you go, you got this mysterious guy, Melchizedek. He just walks in on the pages and walks right out. And in tomorrow's Daily Devo, I talk about Melchizedek, and the one after that, I talk about the king of Sodom. And what's just some fun highlights, if you guys want to go and research and read this on your own, there's a lot of theories and a lot of theologians, a lot of commentaries on who Melchizedek could be. And there's different ways people look at it. And guess what, guys? That's okay. That's okay. It's not going to rock your salvation. There's one way to heaven, that's Jesus, okay? So sometimes it's fun to study the Bible and see how God brings it to light to you. You can back it up with Scripture, pray over it, look at it. But Melchizedek, it's interesting to see the king of Salem. That word Salem means peace, which is later on, this is Jerusalem, and so he is the king of peace. And then also that you have that he is, his name that we find out later means king of righteousness. You have king of righteousness, king of peace, bringing out bread and wine, and this guy's a high priest. Hey guys, when did priests come into play? Not till Moses' time. So how is this guy a high priest? Not only that, how does he know there's only one God? Because at this time, there were lots of gods. So anyways, that's just a little preview for you guys of how fun it is to read the Bible. Guys, the Bible's not boring, even though it can be. I get it. Snooze fest when you get to Numbers and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But it's action-packed and full of truth when you really dive in and see what just happened. And so what I really want to focus on this morning is this middle section of here, because it could get overlooked, of Abram rescuing Lot. And this is what I want to dive into is this section right here, is Abram rescuing Lot, because you can unpack this whole thing. But I asked you guys this at the beginning. I said, what has God rescued you from? It's so good to remember that. I asked my father-in-law for permission for this part, and so my father-in-law described it to me as this. We love taking car rides together, me and my father-in-law. His name's Frank. And me and Frank love taking car rides together. We just debrief. It's a quiet place, and we just talk about life. He loves talking about ministry. Before he gave his life to the Lord, he got into some trouble, and he was in prison. And when he was in prison, he said to me, Matt, it was like this. He said, I felt like my life, if I were to put it into a story, it was like I was on a raft out at the beach, and I started on the shore. And next thing I know, I look up from my raft, and the shore is way back there. And I asked myself, how did I get here? He said, that's why I asked myself when I was on that prison bed. I asked myself, how did I get here? He said, next thing I knew, I just looked back, and life was way back here. And he said, every decision that I was making was pushing me farther and farther away. And he said it was at that time he started seeking and asking, and he gave his life to the Lord. He became a Christian in prison, and now he does prison ministry, which is really cool. He goes all around the nation, preaches the gospel, baptizes people in prison, gets Bibles into prison. It is phenomenal what God's done in that man's life. But I never forgot that analogy that he gave me, is when he looked out, he felt like he was on this raft. You guys ever been there in the ocean? By the way, oceans are scary. Okay, just throwing that out there. And you look back, and all of a sudden the tide just takes you out, and it's like life's way back here, and everyone's a little dot, and you're like, how did I get here? I want you to know that's how easy sin is. That is how easy it is. I told you, look at the pattern that Lot had. I want you guys to know it's not just all of a sudden you woke up and you had an affair on your spouse. There were steps that happened to get there. It wasn't just one time you decided to open up your laptop and search up pornography and it just appeared on your computer. There were steps that it took to get there. It wasn't just that you woke up and you blacked out because you can't remember what yesterday happened. There were steps that got you to find out what's at the bottom of that bottle. Sin entices you. The devil's crafty in how he does it. Even though it's the same three things he does, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, the pride, it's the same three tactics, which is why we need to suit up and be ready, because it's the same three things. But look, Lot saw, and what did he do? He separated himself, he got closer, and he faced his tent towards sin. And if you're not careful, if I'm not careful, we could do the same thing. We can look at something or someone that just walks right by us, an ad on a billboard or something on the screen or something on your phone or a conversation that's happening, and all it takes is one more look. Wait, what? And you can have interest. Or it just looks appealing, or it looks different. Then you start isolating yourself and pulling away from either church or people that are going to hold you accountable. And guess what, guys? Us people that usually are in sin, we hate the word accountable. Yeah. Like, ugh, don't tell me that. Ugh, I don't need accountability. I go to Bible studies. I go to, yes, we do. I have accountability people in my life. I have people that ask me the hard questions about my marriage, about my finances, about giving. Ooh. I have that, guys. I need that. If I don't have someone doing that, guess where I'm going to be? On a raft in the middle of the ocean, looking back saying, how did I get here? We need accountability. We need people in our life to point us back to the cross. And so look what Lot did. He slowly progressed and got away, and he got into a position to where he thought he had it all. If I only had out there. And because what's funny is he must have been thinking about Sodom and Gomorrah for so long that when Abram gave him a choice, what land do you want? He had no hesitation. Sodom and Gomorrah. If God were to give you a choice of which way you want to go, how quick would you be to say towards him or the other way? I saw a video that went viral of people going around asking people, would you like $1 million or 5 minutes with God? Do you know how many people said $1 million? For some of us in here, we're like, $1 million sounds pretty good. Which way is your tent facing? Is it towards what your heart really is desiring? Or have you repented from your old ways, which means turning away from? You're letting this renew your mind. It's a renewing of your mind, and you're facing the cross. And you're letting that be the focus of your life. You're letting that dictate your decisions, that dictate your values and your morals and how you're talking to people. Before we dive into this part, I want you to see is, I shared the story a long time ago, but I want to share this again. You guys ever been to Yosemite? Is there any Yosemite people in here? Yosemite, like Californians? We have sometimes people are like, I'm from California. And I'm like, what took so long? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we're here. And so we went, my dad, he was a wrestling coach for a long time. He used to take us wrestlers to Yosemite to a place called Half Dome. And we would go, we'd take the wrestling team early in the morning before the sun would rise. We'd pack into Suburban. And he had an assistant coach named Coach C. And Coach C is one of the buffest dudes I've ever seen. He had like implants in his arms. These things were ginormous. And he had like, his calves were just unbelievable. It's like all the statues were like probably sculpted around him. And he was just this big dude, just massive, Coach C. And we all would pile in the car and we would go to Half Dome. So it's because it's half of a dome, okay? This is in California in a place called Yosemite. It's not Yosemite, it's Yosemite. And if you look at those little ants on the side of the mountain, those are actually people. That's the way to go up. There's like this really straight up rope that you kind of go. It's got wooden steps on it, and you go up there. And there's a picture, I think, of me and my brothers one of the times we went up there. That's us sleeping on the cliff, on the edge of it. And if you zoom in, I think you can see. Yep, there's my very white legs on the far side. My older brother is laying out. My little brother's probably making sure we don't roll off in our sleep off the edge of it. But this is Half Dome, and my dad would take us brothers, or us wrestling team, we'd go up there. Now, the first time he did this, we'd never been before. And so we got there, and we made a decision in the car, because we're wrestlers, we're competitive, who's going to get up to Half Dome and back to the van, the Suburban, the fastest. But what we didn't know was that this is an all-day thing there and back. We're just used to short sprints and stuff my dad would do in the wrestling room, and we're going to go all out. So by the time right when we parked, I convinced one of my friends. I said, hey, let's just get out and sprint. What about our waters? What about our food? No, we're going to sprint. We're going to beat there. And so he's like, okay. And the light's starting to come out. We get out of the car and we just sprint. And everyone's like, where are you guys going? We got this. And we just start running in Yosemite. And then it took us about maybe 3 hours. And we're like, actually, I don't know where I'm going. And we don't see any trails. We don't see any signs, which if you guys have been used to, there's signs for trails everywhere. And I start panicking. But I don't tell my friend that because then he'll panic. I'm more looking at which limb am I going to eat first the longer that we're out here. And so I'm starting to panic. We don't have food, we don't have water, and we get lost. And I'm trying to figure out where are we going, and this is bad. And we get to a point where there's this wall right in front of us. It's this rock wall with a tree stump, and there's another tree stump at the top, and the sun is like kind of up, but this wall is so high that it's blocking the sun. And I'm just at a point where I'm just giving up. And I'm thinking, okay, it was nice knowing him. His fingers are fat enough to start those off with chicken wings. So I'll start eating those. And as I'm giving up, I look up and I see this shadowy figure come up on the top of the mountain. It was like a movie. I see these doves come up, and the sun just starts peeking up above him. And the guy's standing on this log, and it's Coach C. His massiveness. He goes, guys, come on, this way. And we were so pumped. We got up and we ran up this mountain. We were able to get up. We connected back with them. They took us to the promised land and back down. And I want you to know that from that point on, we stuck with our group. We ate, and I was so thankful for food. But for Coach C, who went before us, he came back for us. He got us. Yeah, there I was relieved. Again, look at the little dots behind us. But this right here is a little bit of a picture of what happened with Lot, is the decision that he made to separate himself and go to an isolated land not only impacted himself, but as all those around him. Because I want you to see, you just saw, we had the beginning of this chapter is a list of all these kings, and they all were under a certain rulership, and they're all going to war against each other. Do you think when Lot made a decision to move to Sodom and Gomorrah, he knew that in just a couple months or years' time, there was going to be a war that was going to impact his family there? No. But you know who did? God. He knows what's on the grass is greener, guys. He knows it always looks like that, doesn't it? The grass is greener if I only had that. If I had this wife, if I had this house, if I had this finance, if I had this response. He knows what's really over. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. He has you right where he wants you with the spouse that you have right now. He's got you right there and wants you to be plugged and planted and abiding in him, not your circumstances. And so when Lot made this decision to go out there, look what it says in verse 11 and 12. The four kings took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food and went on. They also took Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, for he was living in Sodom, and they went on. With the things that he desired for the world, he ended up being a slave to. When they came and they took him, all the things he longed for that the world gave to him, he ended up losing it all and becoming a slave. I wonder what he was thinking as he was captive, and he thought, oh my gosh, it was all for nothing. Why did I do this? Why did I separate myself? It doesn't say that, but I can only imagine if I'm in his shoes, this is what I'm thinking. You know why? Because I've been there. Why did I go after this? Why did I make these decisions? Why did I not listen to my dad? Why did I not listen to my mom? Why did I not listen to that pastor? Why did I not listen to why did I thought those things when I've been captive in my shame and my guilt? Has anyone else ever thought that before? You're in your shame and your guilt, and you're wondering, how did I get here? Because I was facing the wrong direction, and I desired the things of the world, just like most of us do. In Matthew 16, it tells us, what good is it if a man gains the whole world, but you lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? You can have it all, guys. You want the world, you can have it all, but guess what? You're not taking it with you. One. And two, if that's really what you want, then you're going to say no to Jesus. If you're saying, I want this, listen, I'll get to you later. I want this. You can't have both. You've got to make a decision of which way is your tent and who are you going all in for, the world or the word? Which one do you want to transform and impact your life? And I'm not saying when you just go to Jesus, you're never going to stumble, you're going to be perfect. No, you're going to mess up, but you have a direction because that's which way your tent is facing, and you're going to keep going that way. But look what happens when he goes to the Word. The things that he thought he wanted and craved, he now was in shame and guilt, and he was a slave to. And some of you may be feeling those things right now. So you maybe have felt those things, and maybe it's a good reminder to be reminded of what you were rescued and saved from. Is what Abram did is he didn't have to go and rescue him. He made a choice to separate from him. He knew where he was going. Am I saying Abram's Christ? No. But I want you to see that he left the comfort of what he had, Abram. He had he chose wisely. He was going to the Lord, obedient to the Lord. He had that. And he left his comfort to go rescue someone, a kinsman, that was in shame and guilt and was a slave, and brought him back. And I want you guys to know, even if you're on that raft in the middle of the ocean, God can bring you back if you're looking to him. If you have a humble posture and a humble heart to say, Lord, I need you. I want you to see how quick it is, real quick, and I'm going to end here in a second with something, but if we could get Psalm 1:1 on here. This is my mom when we were in school would have us memorize this, and this is the translation I had it memorized in was the ESV. It says, "Blessed." So if you want to be blessed, guys, listen. You want to know how to have a blessed walk? Is the man or the woman, the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. That's the word right here. And on his law he meditates day and night. I want you to see right here you have the progression of Lot as well. But this is how you get plugged into sin, and how you got there is this. Look, you start off walking, then you stand, and then you're sitting in your sin. That's what happens. Blessed is the man who does not walk. So if you want to live blessed, don't do this. Don't walk and separate yourself from the Lord. Don't walk with sinners and be a part of that lifestyle. Don't do that, because then what are you going to do? You're going to find yourself enjoying it, and now I'm going to stand here, and I'm now stuck in this, and I'm going to enjoy this conversation. I'm going to take part in these things, and now I'm going to sit in it. That's how easy it is, the progression of sin. I usually tell people it's easy to get involved in the lifestyle, it's hard to get out. Easy to get involved in the lifestyle, hard to get out. And I want you to know, if you want to walk a life pleasing to the Lord, don't do those things. You walk towards him, and what does it say to do? Delight in his word. Stay connected and abiding in him daily. Stay connecting in the promises of what he's done for you. Meditate on those things, not how life could be better if I only had this. Guys, you have the only thing that matters, and that's Christ. Outside of that, what is it? Fun wants? Anything God gives to you is a blessing on top of his sacrifice he did on that cross. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget the things that he's done for you. Just like this moment here. Now, the sad thing is we're going to see Lot goes back into that world, but you see the grace of God still in that moment here in a couple chapters. But I want you to see that if you've ever been in that moment to where you've been lost at sea and you wonder, how did I get here? God still sees you. He still loves you. He sent the Son to come die for you and saying, come back. And if you're in that position right now, say you gave your life to the Lord and you've walked away and you're in that moment to where you're sitting in your sin and you're afraid to go back to Jesus, you know what? His arms are open for you to return. They're open for you to come back to him. I used to be afraid to go back to Jesus because I was afraid he was waiting for me with a paddle if I were to come back here. I'd say, man, I told you. But his arms are open for me, and he wants to say, welcome home. Let's celebrate. My son has returned. And he's going to say the same thing for you. When he says, my son, my daughter has returned. Do not be ashamed at any point to turn around and come back to him. The thief on the cross made the best decision of saying, remember me on his last dying breath. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus says, today you'll be with me in paradise. Guys, eternity, your salvation is instant. It's not something you got to work for or earn. It is declaring with your mouth and believing in your heart that Jesus is Lord and that God raised him from the dead. You repent from that old lifestyle and you turn towards the cross. And guys, you're saved. And we need to know this. You guys may be saying, Matt, I know the gospel. I understand that. But guess what, guys? Our mission here is to renew the hope in our city through that gospel, through that good news. We need to be reminded of it so that when we walk out of here, we're looking for the lots. I said it's a lot to gain, a lot to lose. Why? He had a lot to gain going to Sodom and Gomorrah. But you know what? He lost a lot. Because it cost him everything. Now, if you want to gain a lot, you have to lose a lot, which is yourself. So that's why the last have a lot to lose. You got a lot to gain. Jesus says, deny yourself. Deny yourself. The pride, the things that you think that you need, the things that you think will get you to heaven or to get God's favor. You lay it down and you have everything to gain, an inheritance that's waiting for you. That prodigal son that I'm talking about, that he goes home and the dad's like, welcome home. He made that best decision. He was in a pig pen. His sin got him in a pig pen where he lost it all. And he said, I will arise and go to my father's house. And you guys can make that decision right now. You can encourage someone today to make that decision to say, you can arise. There's hope for you in Jesus Christ. Where he came and rescued someone like me. Where he came, he died, he rose again. And so what I want to do is let's just bow our head and close our eyes and I just want to thank the Lord for what he's done and remember our need for him. Remember what he's done for us, that it's not because I'm a good person or you're a good person or I've earned it or I've deserved it or I gave enough or I read enough. Guys, he loves you right now and there's nothing that you've done to earn that. But I want you to know he loves you enough and accepts you enough for you to come to him. But you'll never be enough without him. And it's more than just saying, yes, he died for me. It's coming out of that lifestyle, that sinful lifestyle that I'm in, to come out of that tax collector's booth or out of that moment and live a life that has him in it as the master of my life, transforming my decisions and my desires and letting him shape those into the man or the woman that he's asking you to be. And so if you've never said yes to Jesus, this is a moment for you to say, Jesus, I need you in my life. It's just surrendering your heart and your posture and your wills to saying, I want your will to be mine, Lord. I believe that you died for this sinner. I know that. And maybe there's someone that you're thinking of that you want to share that gospel with. This is a moment where you can say, Lord, just give me the courage or the wisdom to go share that with them. To maybe you've seen that person or that family member that's in Sodom and Gomorrah right now, that you just need to have faith in the Lord that he's got you. And you've been training for this moment with your testimony and the things God's prepared you for to go into that place and share the gospel with them. And remember, we're not the Savior, but Christ is on that cross. So Lord, I ask during this worship song that if there's anyone in here that hasn't said yes to you, that they just use this to surrender their lives to you. If there's anyone in here just that needs to be reminded of this, may your grace and your love flow over them. And may they just be astounded by your grace, your love, your forgiveness, and mercy for them. So, Lord, again, just fill this place with your presence. Fill us with your Spirit. We love you, Lord, and praise you in your name. Amen.